You reach into your coat pocket, your fingers brush against a crumpled $5 bill, and you freeze.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Right. Because you are standing at a city crosswalk. Maybe you're rushing to a meeting or just grabbing a coffee, and right in front of you is someone holding a piece of cardboard.
Right. And they clearly need help.
Exactly. But in that split second, between touching the money and actually pulling it out, this very specific friction hits you.
Like a hesitation.
Yeah. You look at the person and you wonder, is handing over this cash actually going to change their circumstances? Or is this transaction just about buying myself like 10 minutes of a clear conscience?
That hesitation is, it's one of the most universal yet honestly least discussed psychological bottlenecks we experience in modern life.
Totally.
It is the collision between our instinct for compassion and our, deep-seated anxiety about effectiveness. We want to intervene, but the fear of doing it wrong often just paralyzes us.
Today, we are going to unpack that exact friction. Welcome to the deep dive. Our focus today is a modern-day parable translated from the Global Life Stores channel.
Yeah, it's titled God's Friend or Hemgelinen in the original Hindi.
Right. And the mission here, for you, the learner listening to this, the mission isn't to just read you a fable.
No, definitely not.
The mission is to use this narrative as a framework to completely deconstruct the mechanics of charity, the psychology of wealth, and how you navigating your own daily routine might be fundamentally misunderstanding what it actually means to be helpful.
Because the story acts as it's a behavioral audit, really.
A behavioral audit, I like that.
Yeah, it takes massive, tangled concepts like wealth insulation and the ethics of intervention, and it forces us to look at them through the lens of a single afternoon shared by two childhood friends.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because any meaningful conversation about giving has to start with an analysis of the vantage point from which we view the world.
The baseline.
Exactly. So we are situated in a loud, relentless environment. Think New York or London, millions of people, high stress, high
It's
velocity.
just constant noise.
Yeah. And we are introduced to Liam and Noah, two friends representing drastically different adaptations to this exact environment.
Let's examine Liam's adaptation first, because it's very common. He is highly successful, sharp, and operates with a very specific armored worldview.
Very armored.
The text notes he operates on the core belief that free help has no value. He states essentially that he earned his position through relentless effort, and distributing his capital for free undermines the very system of earning.
I want to look closely at that mindset because, it is incredibly common. Liam isn't written as like a cartoon villain twirling his mustache.
Right. No, he's highly rational.
Yeah, he is operating inside a highly rational meritocratic framework. If you view your success entirely as the product of your own sweat and intellect, the logical corollary is that someone else's failure, well, that must be a product of their lack of effort.
Right. And it functions as a psychological defense mechanism.
How so?
Well, if you acknowledge that circumstances, luck, or, systemic issues play a massive role in where people end up, it introduces cognitive dissonance.
It's uncomfortable.
Exactly. It threatens the ego. So by maintaining the belief that free help has no value, Liam creates this clean, frictionless narrative that justifies keeping his resources entirely to himself.
It's like he built a fortress, right,
No?
out of his own achievements, and he looks out from the battlements, assuming everyone else simply chose not to build one.
That is a perfect analogy, yes.
Which brings us to Noah. Noah lives outside that fortress. He works an ordinary job, lives a quiet life, but his defining characteristic is a permeable boundary with the rest of the world.
He's not insulated.
Right. His heart is open to the friction that Liam aggressively avoids. And the story establishes this contrast not just philosophically, but through their physical environment.
The inciting incident is brilliant here.
It really is. So Liam is driving his luxury car and spots Noah riding a bicycle on the side of the road.
What's fascinating here is how vital the environmental choices are. Liam pulls over and tells Noah to get in so they can run an errand together.
And Noah counters.
He does. He refuses the car and insists that Liam get out and ride on the back of the bicycle. Noah explicitly states he wants to show Liam a world that is unseen from car windows.
Which is such a wild request to make of a guy like Liam. Liam actually hesitates, which makes total sense. He is a guy used to climate control and tinted glass.
Right, he's totally out of his element.
Yeah, he makes a joke about Noah paying his medical bills if he pulls a muscle, but he eventually gets on the bike. So we need to talk about why Noah forces this transition. I mean, why couldn't they just have this conversation in the leather seats of the sedan?
Because a luxury vehicle is essentially a sensory deprivation chamber engineered for the elite.
Wow. A sensory deprivation chamber.
Think about the physical reality of driving a high-end car through a crowded city. The suspension absorbs the potholes so you don't feel the infrastructure failing. The acoustic glass blocks out the sirens and the shouting. The climate control removes the sweltering heat or the freezing cold. You just glide through the city without ever actually touching it.
You are watching the human experience on like a muted television screen through your windshield. You are visually present, but physically and emotionally untethered from the reality of the pavement.
And by stripping away that vehicle, Noah is forcing Liam to re-enter the ecosystem. On a bicycle, you share the vulnerability of the pedestrian.
Right. You smell the exhaust, you feel the heat radiating off the asphalt, you have to make eye contact to avoid collisions.
Noah understands that you cannot teach empathy to someone who is physically insulated from the data of human suffering. Empathy requires sensory input.
So that transition from the insulated car to the exposed bicycle, that sets the stage for the first real test of Liam's worldview.
The traffic signal.
Yes, they pull up to a traffic signal, and we encounter the paradox of blind charity. A young man walks up to them holding a cardboard sign. The universal, unspecific plea, anything helps.
And Liam immediately uses this as a rhetorical weapon.
Totally.
He challenges Noah, essentially saying, here's your chance to deploy all that compassion you preach about. This guy is young and able-bodied, but he's begging. Let's see you fix it.
The twist that completely derails Liam's expectation is that Noah does absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
He ignores the beggar. He refuses to hand over a single dime. But he doesn't leave it there. He tells Liam they need to observe the outcome.
Right, they follow him.
Yeah. So the two of them follow this young man from a distance, and they watch as the beggar takes the handful of cash he just collected from the intersection, walks straight into a liquor store, buys alcohol, and retreats into an alleyway to drink it.
The lesson Noah delivers in that alleyway is really the crux of the first half of our source material. He tells Liam that helping isn't inherently wrong, but helping in the right place is crucial.
Otherwise,
you aren't providing assistance, you are contributing to their destruction.
okay, I am going to push back hard on Noah's methodology here because this feels highly impractical.
How so?
Well, is it actually realistic to expect someone navigating a modern city to play private investigator every time they are asked for spare change?
That's a fair question.
It feels like Noah is letting perfect be the enemy of good. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that actually needs stitches. Sure, it looks like you're helping, but you might just be hiding the infection. But still, if I have $5 and someone is hungry, isn't the friction of verifying their need just a convenient excuse for me to keep my money? Isn't giving blindly at least a net positive in a chaotic world?
I think your Band-Aid analogy is spot on, and that is the exact tension the story wants to provoke. Your frustration with the friction of investigation is entirely normal.
Thank you.
But we have to ask what we are actually optimizing for when we hand a $5 bill out of a car window.
Okay.
Behavioral psychology suggests that in those fleeting moments, we are rarely optimizing for the recipient's long-term utility. We're actually optimizing for our own emotional regulation.
Wait, really? We are paying to relieve our own discomfort?
Precisely. The term for this is warm glow giving. You see a distressing visual, a person in poverty. That visual creates cognitive dissonance and emotional distress in you.
Right.
By handing over a few dollars, you trigger a quick hit of dopamine. You successfully cast yourself in the role of a good person. The distressing visual cue is removed from your immediate vicinity, and you get to drive away with a clean conscience.
Oh, wow. It is like paying someone to take away your trash without ever asking where the landfill is. You are just funding the removal of the problem from your immediate line of sight.
Exactly. And Noah is highlighting the danger of destructive enabling. If your charity is driven by your ego's need to feel generous, rather than a deep understanding of the recipient's actual crisis, you risk funding the very mechanism of their decline.
Because the young man in the story didn't need capital, he was battling addiction.
Right. By blindly injecting cash into that system, the drivers at the intersection were accelerating his physical destruction while congratulating themselves for being charitable.
So Noah's refusal to participate in that transaction isn't a lack of compassion. It is a refusal to prioritize his own ego over the reality of the young man's situation.
Yes.
But it leaves a massive vacuum. I mean, if blind charity is off the table, what is the alternative? How do you actually intervene?
The source material pivots beautifully here to answer that exact question. It shifts from the danger of the unexamined transaction to the mechanics of targeted empathy.
Let's look at the second encounter. Noah and Liam are taking a break, and Noah is waiting outside a shop. While standing there, he notices an old man selling pens on the sidewalk.
But the critical data point here,
Yeah, the thing you only notice if you are actually paying attention
right,
is that the old man is entirely barefoot. The pavement is scorching hot under the midday sun. The man is clearly in agony, constantly shifting his weight on the burning ground, but he isn't holding a sign.
he isn't soliciting pity.
No, he is just trying to sell his pens.
He is enduring the environment.
Exactly. Noah takes in this information and immediately acts. But the sequence of his actions is fascinating. He doesn't approach the man. He doesn't strike up a conversation.
Nope.
Noah walks into a nearby store, uses his own money to purchase a pair of shoes, and walks back out. Liam watches this unfold from a distance. Noah approaches the old man, hands him the physical pair of shoes, and simply says, "Uncle, you need these shoes."
That phrase is striking in its directness. There is no performance, no lecture, just the delivery of a highly specific solution.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Why not just hand the man $20?
Ah,
I mean, from an economic standpoint, handing over a $20 bill is the most efficient transfer of value. The man needs shoes. Shoes cost money. Give him the money. Why does Noah take on the friction of doing the shopping himself?
if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's because there is a vast psychological gulf between transferring wealth and transferring care.
Transferring care.
Right. When you hand someone a $20 bill in that context, you are essentially outsourcing the labor of the solution back to the person who is already in crisis.
That's a great point.
The transaction essentially says, I acknowledge your suffering, here are some raw resources, now you go navigate the logistics of solving your own problem.
It maintains a strict boundary. It keeps the relationship purely transactional.
Furthermore, consider the recipient's dignity. The old man is attempting to operate a business, however small. He is selling pens. If Noah drops $20 into his hand without buying a pen, it forces the man into the role of a beggar.
Yeah, it strips away his agency.
Exactly. By purchasing the physical shoes, Noah bypasses the power dynamic of a cash handout. He didn't just throw a resource at a demographic. He diagnosed a specific acute point of suffering the burning skin on the asphalt and applied the exact antidote.
This illustrates that deep, granular observation is the absolute prerequisite for effective generosity. Think back to Liam in the luxury car.
Right, from behind the acoustic glass.
Moving at 40 miles an hour, Liam would have perceived the old man simply as a blurry shape occupying space on the sidewalk. He wouldn't have seen the shifting weight or the wincing face.
He wouldn't have felt the heat.
No. Noah could only execute targeted empathy because he was grounded in the friction of the environment, moving at a speed that allowed him to process the granular data of human pain.
Observation requires presence. You cannot diagnose the burning feet if you're too busy looking at your phone or insulated by your own success.
Yeah, and the result of Noah's targeted intervention triggers the emotional climax of our narrative, completely dismantling the last remaining walls of Liam's meritocratic fortress.
The fallout from this specific exchange is where the philosophical weight of the story truly lands.
Noah hands over the shoes. The old man slips them onto his blistered feet, and the relief is so immediate and overwhelming that he begins to weep. He looks up at Noah, his voice shaking, and asks a startling question. He says, "Son, are you God?"
It is a profound expression of disorientation. The relief is so specific that he attributes it to divine intervention.
Noah smiles gently and clarifies that he is just an ordinary person. But the old man shakes his head and delivers the line that gives the story its title. He says, "Then you are God's friend, because yesterday I asked God for shoes, and today he sent you."
The language here really forces us to reconsider the mechanics of how the universe provides for its inhabitants.
Noah is visibly shaken by this. He gets choked up, turns, and walks away, leaving the old man raising his hands in gratitude to God. Now we have to look at Liam.
Because Liam has been watching all of this.
Liam has been standing in the background, quietly observing this entire sequence, from the refusal to fund the young beggar's addiction to the precise, dignified intervention with the old man. The narrative states that in this moment, Liam's ego shatters.
Completely.
He walks over, touches Noah's shoulder, and admits that true wealth isn't money. True wealth is someone's blessing.
We are witnessing a total paradigm shift in how Liam calculates value.
So what does this all mean?
Well, let's break down what is happening in Liam's head.
Yeah.
His entire life has been dedicated to the accumulation of financial capital. Right.
It is a game with clear metrics, bank balances, property, luxury vehicles. He believed that accumulating these resources made him powerful and secure. But standing on that sidewalk, he confronts a harsh limitation of his worldview.
Because financial capital is entirely useless the moment you leave this earth, you can't take the luxury sedan with you.
Exactly. The story forces a confrontation with mortality and legacy. Liam realizes that while he has been hoarding resources, Noah has been accumulating social and spiritual capital.
Yeah.
The concept of being God's friend implies acting as an active agent of release in a chaotic system. When the old man cries in gratitude, Noah experiences a profound, unadulterated connection that no amount of compound interest can replicate.
Liam suddenly understands that Noah is operating on a much higher plane of existence. The ROI on targeted empathy drastically outperforms the ROI on blind wealth accumulation.
Right. Noah is incredibly wealthy, and Liam, despite his bank account, is impoverished.
Liam's vow to walk this new path alongside Noah represents a total rejection of the insulated life. He chooses the friction of the bicycle over the numbness of the car.
Which brings his entire exploration directly back to you, the learner listening to this.
Yes, exactly. The Global Life Stories channel presents this narrative not just as a heartwarming tale, but as a direct challenge to the architecture of your own daily routine. The central premise is unavoidable. Humanity itself is the greatest wealth.
But accepting that premise requires a relentless audit of how we navigate our own environments.
Think about the physical and digital paths you take every single day. Are you moving through your life locked inside your own metaphorical luxury car?
Insulated.
Are you rushing from one obligation to the next, shielded by noise-canceling headphones, curated social media feeds, and tightly managed schedules, assuming that because your environment is controlled, everyone else must be fine?
Or are you willing to ride the bicycle?
Right. Are you willing to expose yourself to the uncomfortable, unpredictable friction of the real world so that you can gather the data necessary to actually see the people standing next to you?
The transition from seeing a category of people to observing an individual in pain is, well, that's the hardest work we can do.
Let's synthesize exactly what we've unpacked. We started by dismantling the illusion of the insulated life, analyzing how success can inadvertently build walls that filter out human suffering.
We then confronted the uncomfortable reality of blind charity.
Yes, how our instinct for the quick dopamine hit of warm glow giving can easily morph into destructive enabling, serving our ego rather than the crisis at hand.
And we examined the rigorous demands of targeted empathy.
Learning that true intervention requires the friction of observation and the transfer of care, not just the transfer of wealth. Finally, we looked at the ultimate redefinition of capital, recognizing that acting as an agent of relief generates a type of wealth that outlasts any financial portfolio.
It fundamentally rewrites the job description of being a human being in a shared society.
Which leaves us with one final unavoidable question. We have spent this entire time analyzing the transfer of money and material resources. But if true giving relies heavily on the precision of your empathy and your willingness to endure friction, how does that shift the way you allocate your most precious, non-renewable assets?
That's the real challenge.
Tomorrow morning, when you step out of your door, how are you going to spend your time? And more importantly, where are you going to direct your attention?